Welcome to Sparks. As we count down to the launch of John Michael's long-anticipated novel, The Insiders, this week, we are learning how your brain's 86 billion neurons rewire themselves through choice, habit, and the stories you choose to believe about transformation. The rewiring revolution, and why your brain wants you to believe change is impossible. As professionals, we're constantly told to adapt or die in our rapidly changing workplace landscape. But here's what most leadership development programs won't tell you. Your brain is actively working against the very changes you're trying to make.
Wait, what? My brain is actively working against the very changes I'm trying to make? My own brain is working against me?
That's right. Your brain is actively working against the very changes you're trying to make. Not because it's broken, but because it's doing exactly what it was designed to do, keep you alive by maintaining predictable patterns. Understanding this isn't just fascinating neuroscience, it's the key to unlocking genuine transformation in your career, relationships, and personal growth. Because once you know how your brain actually changes, you can work with its design rather than fighting against it. What if I told you that every limiting belief you've ever held, every habit that's held you back, and every pattern that's kept you stuck was actually your brain trying to protect you? And what if the secret to transformation wasn't forcing change, but understanding how to rewire your neural networks through the choices you make every single day? The Great Neural Conspiracy. Your brain contains approximately 86 billion neurons, each capable of forming thousands of connections with other neurons. This creates a network so complex that if you tried to count every connection, it would take you over 3 million years working 24/7. This isn't just impressive, it's the foundation of every thought you think, every decision you make, and every habit you've formed. But here's what's truly remarkable. This network is constantly changing. Every experience you have, every choice you make, every thought you repeat is literally carving pathways through this neural landscape. Neuroscientists call this neuroplasticity, your brain's extraordinary ability to reorganize itself throughout your entire life. In The Insiders, this process comes alive when Bran discovers that touching the walls of the Alex reveals the intricate network of connections running throughout the ship. These aren't just decorative patterns, they're the living neural pathways that determine how information flows, how decisions get made, and how the ship responds to challenges. When Bran places his hand on these dendrite-like walls, he's not just exploring the ship's architecture, he's discovering how transformation actually works at the most fundamental level. Every choice made by every crew member strengthens some pathways whilst allowing others to fade. The ship literally becomes what its crew consistently thinks, chooses, and believes. The habit highway system. Think of your most automatic behaviors, how you respond to stress, your morning routine, the way you react when someone challenges your ideas. These aren't random responses, they're superhighways carved through your neural landscape by repetition. Every time you repeat a thought or behavior, you strengthen the neural pathway associated with it. Think anxious thoughts repeatedly. You build anxiety superhighways. Practice gratitude consistently. You construct gratitude networks. React defensively to feedback. You reinforce defensive response patterns. This is why change feels so difficult. You're not just trying to adopt new behaviors. You're attempting to create new neural pathways whilst your brain keeps defaulting to the well-established highways it's already built. It's like trying to create a new route through a dense forest whilst a perfectly good motorway already exists. In Romans 12 verse 2, Paul wrote, "Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind." NIV. Paul understood something that neuroscience has only recently confirmed. Transformation happens through mental renewal, not just behavioral modification. The Greek word Paul used for transformed is metamorpho, the same word used to describe a caterpillar becoming a butterfly. This isn't minor adjustment, it's fundamental restructuring at the deepest level. The stories your brain tells you. But here's where it gets really interesting. Your brain doesn't just process experiences, it creates stories about what those experiences mean. And these stories become the operating system that determines how you interpret every future situation. "I'm not good at public speaking" isn't just an observation, It's a neural network that filters every speaking opportunity through the lens of anticipated failure. "I'm not a creative person" becomes a story that prevents you from even attempting creative solutions. "Change is hard for me" transforms into a self-fulfilling prophecy that makes change genuinely more difficult. In The Insiders, the crew members constantly grapple with the stories they believe about themselves and their capabilities. Bran's exile to the basement forces him to confront the narrative that he's a failure, whilst his gradual transformation reveals that sometimes our greatest setbacks become our most valuable preparation. These aren't just fictional character arcs, they're accurate representations of how neural rewiring actually works. When you change the story you tell yourself about your capabilities, you literally change the neural networks that determine your responses to challenges. The nanobots of limiting beliefs. Throughout The Insiders, nanobots infiltrate the Alex's systems, spreading lies so subtle they're almost undetectable. They don't announce themselves with obvious facades. Instead, they whisper things like, "You've tried to change before and failed. Why would this time be different? Other people can transform, but you're different. You're stuck with who you are. Change is too hard. It's easier to stay where you are. You're too old, young, busy, damaged to really change." These nanobots represent something every human experiences, the subtle lies that multiply in our thinking until they control our responses to opportunities for growth. They're not dramatic or obviously false, they're just believable enough to keep us trapped in patterns that no longer serve us. The insidious nature of these mental nanobots is that they feel like wisdom. They masquerade as being realistic or protecting yourself from disappointment. But they're actually fear-based programming designed to keep you in your comfort zone, even when that zone has become a prison. The rewiring rebellion. But here's the hope woven throughout the story. You can debug your own mental software. Every time you choose a response that contradicts your old patterns, you're literally rewiring your brain. Every time you act on faith rather than fear, you're strengthening neural networks that support growth rather than stagnation. Neuroscientist Dr. Rick Hanson's research reveals that it takes about 20 seconds of focused attention to begin encoding a positive experience into long-term memory. This means you can literally rewire your brain for optimism, resilience, and growth by deliberately focusing on experiences that support these qualities. The process isn't instant, but it's inevitable. Your brain will become what you consistently focus on, think about, and choose to reinforce through your actions. In The Insiders, this plays out as Bran learns to recognize which voices deserve his attention and which ones need to be acknowledged but not followed. He discovers that transformation isn't about eliminating negative thoughts, it's about changing which thoughts get to drive his decisions. The professional application. This has profound implications for your career development. Every time you choose to speak up in a meeting despite feeling nervous, you're rewiring your brain for courage. Every time you respond to feedback with curiosity rather than defensiveness, you're strengthening neural networks that support learning and growth. Consider these common professional scenarios through the lens of neuroplasticity. Networking events. If you consistently tell yourself "I'm not good at networking," you're reinforcing neural pathways that make networking genuinely more difficult. But if you reframe it as "I'm learning to connect with people," you're building networks that support social confidence. New challenges. The story "I don't know how to do this" creates different neural responses than "I don't know how to do this yet." That simple word "yet" implies growth potential and activates different brain regions associated with learning rather than limitation. Setbacks. Interpreting failures as evidence of your inadequacy strengthens neural pathways associated with learned helplessness. Viewing them as learning opportunities literally rewires your brain for resilience and growth. The choice architecture of change. The beautiful truth is that you have more control over this process than you might realize. While you can't directly control your initial reactions to situations, you can choose what happens next. You can decide which thoughts to feed and which to starve. This is what Jesus meant in Matthew 4 verse 4 when he said, "Man shall not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of God." NIV. What you feed your mind determines how your neural networks develop. Feed it truth, and it wires for reality. feed it lies, and it wires for deception. The process requires patience because neural rewiring takes time. You're not just changing your mind, you're literally changing the physical structure of your brain. But every choice you make either reinforces old patterns or creates new ones. Your transformation toolkit. Understanding neuroplasticity gives you practical tools for genuine change. Repetition. New neural pathways require consistent reinforcement. Practice new responses until they become automatic. Attention. What you focus on grows stronger. Deliberately notice and celebrate evidence of positive change. Story revision. Challenge limiting narratives by asking, is this actually true, or is this just a story I've been telling myself? Identity shifts. Instead of I'm trying to be more confident, try I'm becoming someone who speaks with confidence. Your brain responds differently to identity statements than to behavioral goals. Environmental design. Surround yourself with cues that support new patterns and remove triggers that reinforce old ones. The rewiring revolution. The Insiders explores these concepts through characters whose struggles mirror your own capacity for transformation. When you read about Brand's journey from exile to leadership, your mirror neurons fire as if you're experiencing the change yourself. Stories don't just entertain, they provide neural templates for transformation. Every character represents aspects of your own mental processes. Every victory models strategies that actually work. Every setback reveals how growth happens through challenge rather than despite it. The revolution isn't happening in outer space, it's happening in inner space, where thoughts become neural pathways, choices become character, and the stories you believe about change determine whether transformation is possible or impossible. Your brain is ready to be rewired. The question is, what patterns will you choose to strengthen, and what stories will you choose to believe about your capacity for change? Pre-order The Insiders now with early bird discount. books2read.com/The Insiders. What's one limiting story you've been telling yourself that's ready to be rewritten?